TechTables.com, and you're listening to the Public Sector Show by TechTables. This podcast features human-centric stories from public sector CIOs, CISOs, and technology leaders across federal, state, city, county, and higher education. You'll gain valuable insights into current issues and challenges faced by top leaders. Through interviews, speaking engagements, live podcast tour events, we offer you a behind-the-mic look at the opportunities top leaders are seeing today. And to make sure you never miss an episode, head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and hit that follow button and leave a quick rating. Just tap the number of stars that you think this show deserves. Hey everyone, super excited. We're coming to you from an incredible location today, the NASA Memorabilia space at the University of Houston Clear Lake. And I'm surrounded by just amazing pieces of space history and super excited to have Dr. LeeBrian Gaskins, the Senior Associate VP of Information Technology and CIO at the University of Houston Clear Lake, back on the podcast twice in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Incredible. Welcome to TechTables.
Oh, thank you. And Joe, thanks for coming to Houston and checking out our archives.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Matthew brought me through the first room and then took me and Jack. It was total blast. But for those who didn't catch our first episode, just a quick intro and background on yourself.
LeeBrian Gaskins, Senior Associate Vice President of IT and CO for University of Houston Clear Lake. Prior to this, I worked in the A&M system at one of their regional campuses as well as a CIO. Originally from West Virginia, been doing tech for more years than I can count. And yeah, there's not a lot about me.
So give us a little bit of background. You said West Virginia, but there's a great bio. Give us, since this is just one-on-one, give us a little bit more of that. And you were at A&M before, yeah, right? So give us a little more background.
I grew up in West Virginia. Interestingly enough, one of the things when I was a child, really wanted to come to NASA. I used to beg my parents to come to NASA. And I prayed at one point that I would love to be able to go to NASA to just geek out. And that was in West Virginia as I was growing up. Went to West Virginia University, graduated, came to Texas A&M International University on the border with US and Mexico. Stayed there for almost 20 years, got my PhD in international business there. Got to learn a little bit of Spanish, got to learn a lot about import, export, those types of things. And then I saw this amazing opportunity here at the University of Houston Clear Lake near NASA. And I was like, it would be really cool to work near NASA. And interviewed, came here and just fell in love with the place. There's not every day that a childhood dream gets to come true where I can literally say, NASA's in my backyard. I get to rub elbows with former NASA engineers, or I get to see homes of the Apollo or Gemini astronauts that lived in the area and did these things. It's fascinating stuff. And yeah, it's great to be a part of the Clear Lake community and the greater Houston community.
Okay, so I'm curious about a couple things. One, you've got this international business, mystery man background a little bit. But I just on the space front, did that fascinate you as a kid growing up?
I always liked possibilities. And so I used to watch Westerns with my grandfather. And one of the Westerns, like space Westerns, Star Trek, right? And so there's always this going into the unknown, doing what hasn't been done before. And that always just captured my imagination. As a child growing up in rural Appalachia, there's a lot of things you can't do just because it's like poverty, education, all these types of things. But what really fascinated me about space and technology was that there was this striving for doing what hasn't been done before. And NASA embodies that principle of let's do what's never been done before. Let's put men into space. Let's go to the moon. Let's go to Mars. Let's look at the different pieces of our solar system. Let's study the different planets. We learned so much, even just at the peripheral technologies that came out of the space program that make all of our lives better. Those are the kind of things that just captured my imagination. And working here has just been, it's just been like soaking that up regularly like a sponge.
I love that. I love the curiosity. I love the wonder of what's possible. I love that. That's a big one. So before we jump in, where did the international business piece come from?
When you work, I've always been interested in different cultures. And so working in Laredo, you live literally 2 or 3 miles away from the international border. Laredo is the largest inland port in America. They move more commerce and traffic than any other inland port on any of the borders, Canadian and US. And so it was interesting to see how the two countries interacted with each other. International commerce is such an important part of our lives. And I think when I lived in West Virginia, 500 miles in any direction, everybody speaks English. Everybody's pretty much the same. Some demographic changes, but very much everybody's the same. Living in Texas, especially in South Texas, the two countries are so intermingled and so much commerce goes between the two. And so much commerce from other countries outside of Mexico, China, like Vietnam, various countries that import, export through Mexico to the US, and we export to Mexico, even down to simple things like avocados you eat. A lot of them come from Mexico. And so I got really interested in the dynamics of how both sides of the border really work together economically. Like during COVID, when they closed the borders, there was 50,000 people that go back and forth across almost every single day. And so the economic impact was just interesting to see. So those types of things fascinated me. And I was really interested in technology and how do businesses interact with technology in a foreign environment. So you could have a Fortune 500 company in the US and everybody speaks roughly the same language. Everybody is on similar platforms. When you go to another country, Mexico or France or China or South Africa, time zone changes, personality, culture changes. How do you get those teams to work collaboratively with other teams around the world? So if you have a team of 20 people and 5 of them are in France, 3 of them in California, 6 of them are in Mexico, another 20 or another 30 or 40 are in Peru that are doing the build out of things. How do you get all of those on the same team and get a sort of sense of community with that team? So the international business was fascinating to me. I liked business ever since I was young and technology. And so it was a very interesting marriage of international, which is the cultures part, business, which I like business, and the technology, which I studied mostly with in economics when I was doing my doctorate. So.
You have a secret side hustle that no one knows about that you're running? It could be Airbnbs. It could be something more sophisticated.
No, not really. This job takes up the majority of my time. I think my side hustle would be I try to learn as much as I possibly can all the time. So I try to soak as much up. My wife says that's not a money making hustle set, but it's an investment. So I was like, it's an investment. Trust me, it's an investment.
I love that. So we have a mutual friend, Corey Wilburn.
Oh, yes.
Love Corey. Corey, shout out. I've known you for 3.5 years now, and I haven't made it to UT McCombs yet. So maybe this is going to inspire you. Maybe we'll go to the next archive and get there. So he's now the CIO at UT McCombs. Met him when he was the GLO. And so you both share this passion for transforming higher ed through technology. Corey was the first one to come on at EDUCAUSE, which was a blast. How does Texas higher ed community support and learn from each other?
Corey's great people. I love working with them. And one of the ways we work very closely together is we interact a lot with each other. So whether you're in a state agency or higher ed or even in the counties and municipalities, the technology people all know each other or know of each other. And so there's a lot of networking. There's a lot of mentorship trying to grow the next generation of Texas technology leaders. And we have some really good organizations like TAS, TAG, ITM, and those types of organizations. So a lot of networking, a lot of mentoring, a lot of just collaborative work because we all have the same masters, the people of Texas. So what you may be facing in one part of Texas, likely someone else faces that somewhere else. And there's a lot of collaborative work that way.
Yeah, no, that's really great. And the unique advantage I have traveling around the United States is that there are projects happening here that are happening in Washington and in California and in Florida, every state. So yeah, being able to learn from each other and have that connection is great. And the very first task I went to, there was a gal who approached me who was like, I met you at Galveston. It's the very first task you were ever at, and maybe had 30 podcast episodes. And she asked me, how many of you are you at? I'm like, we've published 181, 182, and we have a stock of them. We're probably past 210, 215. When I get home, I'm going to have to get on the editing train. And I can't even keep up. Tim's been recording so much. And it was just fun to reflect that it's been so long. And so I'd never heard of Galveston before the first time. I live in Southern California. And last night, Jack and I almost made it to Galveston. There's a Buc-ee's that's just right there. This is the kind of superstore. Yeah. So I was reflecting on that. And tonight at dinner, Misty will be there. And
Oh, awesome.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah, this is you got to go to Buc-ee's. It's like, if you get a chance, go to a Buc-ee's because it's a truly Texas experience. It's like a supermarket. It's amazing. But the people are wonderful service, great, and it's a great business.
Yeah, it's great. Jumping back in, curious around, what's one of the most valuable lessons that you've learned from peers like Corey in the Texas higher ed community?
One of the most valuable lessons I've learned, collaboration. It's one of the biggest things. A lot of times as technology officers, we tend to be 80% operational and then about 20% strategic. And it's different sets of circumstances. Sometimes you're able to do more in different realms. But collaboration really is a magnifier and multiplier. Being able to bounce some ideas off of someone else or asking what their experiences were in coding really it saves time and it doubles your efforts. But it's something sometimes technology people we just tend not to do. We tend to want to figure it out more so than ask first and then try to work with someone else to figure it out. And that's I think the biggest lesson that I learned. Yeah, so the biggest lesson, one of the big lessons that I've learned is collaboration. Definitely reaching out to peers, reaching out to others who may have similar experiences or even different experiences. It's a magnifier and multiplier. So it magnifies your efforts because you're not doing things alone, but also multiplies them because you have extra heads working on a problem. We're here with NASA. You have a bunch of engineers. In order for them to put people on the moon, all these engineers are working together doing these little bitty pieces, like down to, okay, what does a lander look like? Okay, what type of thing needs to be in the cockpit? All of them are engineering different pieces of it, but they all had to collaborate together. And so it's the same thing with Texas technology. We all have to collaborate together because we're all trying to move the state of Texas and its citizens forward.
There was something you said earlier that I think is probably one of the great struggles for the IT folks, since I'm not in quote IT or in technology, removed from that. So I have that kind of lens looking out. But you mentioned it with the 80%. The mistake is like a lot of the leaders, they were once an individual contributor, and making that jump to leadership, you're now casting vision, you're now looking at the strategy, you're now crafting the strategy. And I think a lot of times early on, you make the mistake because the operations pulls you down. And so I think collaborating with other leaders and seeing, hey, how are you setting your strategic plan? What does that look like? Because you're no longer in the weeds, or just even reflecting on conversations I had with Corey. He was once in the weeds. That's how he got started. And so you have to grow. You don't grow a technical skill set, you grow the leadership skill set, right? Which is pretty fascinating. Just such a different dynamic. On the space front, and I love that we've got this backdrop here. This is totally incredible. Matthew was walking me through a lot of the different books, and we decided we got a couple out here, which is great. I'm glad they're going to be in the shot. Just curious, how does the University of Houston Clear Lake's connection to the space program influence your approach to technology and innovation strategy?
Two different ways. One, there's a strong focus on STEM. We really need to build out and develop and educate the next generation of people who are going to be in STEM fields. So that's a big push. And then also a culture of exploration and resilience. Interesting enough, as you do things in technology, sometimes technology doesn't work right. And so you have to be resilient. You have to be able to bounce back. But you also have to have a culture of exploration. Interesting enough, we're here in Houston. We're right on the Gulf, and there is a storm brewing in the Gulf as we speak. And so Houston is a very resilient town because it's been pummeled a lot. And that's, I think, the culture and the heart of what we do is being exploratory, figuring out new ways to do things, and being very focused on being resilient. And like I said, we really do a lot with STEM fields, like what new technologies. And as you probably drove down Bay Area Boulevard, you will probably see a few of the big names in the space industry. They're looking for the next generation of engineers and leaders. And yes, we're very much tied into, hey, we're developing students to have that spirit of exploration, that spirit of resiliency to go work for them and working at doing internships and those types of things.
Yeah. No, yeah, the hurricane. And actually, we're going to talk about just emergency preparedness tomorrow morning with Lisa Kent and her team, which is coming on. And Bert at the city said there's actually another hurricane coming on Saturday. When are you leaving? I was like, Friday night.
You don't want to stay and watch the hurricane?
Yeah. So hopefully, but what you said about the resiliency piece is so good. And there's a lot of similarities just in entrepreneurship. You have to be incredibly resilient. Things sometimes just go wrong. I think about even just for this event right now, the venue switched twice. There's just so many crazy things that I've thought about that have just gone wrong, that just go wrong. And when you just figure out that in your head, you're like, okay, I just have to focus on what solution am I coming up with? How can I move this forward? And I coach high school basketball, and we just kicked off the season. So we just finished tryouts, and practice is starting up 6 days a week till we kick off. And for a lot of the kids, you put the game plan, and then guess what? A lot of times halftime, you come in during halftime and you're down 20, and you've got to figure out how you're going to come back. And the game plan that you had is pretty much thrown out the window, and you've got to make adjustments. And typically they got to happen pretty fast. But with Houston, just it's the kind of ethos of the city as a whole is, yeah, it's a resilient city. It's strong. And there is something that's like kind of cool to that, because if you take a hit, but you're going to get back up. Any exciting partnerships or initiatives with NASA or into space industry partners that are helping to shape those student opportunities here?
So we have quite a few partnerships that we're doing with some major aerospace industries. And we just got approval to offer an aerospace engineering degree. And so that's a big boon for us, because that's something that will work very well here in Houston. We have all of the industry partners that are so close to us that would really benefit from that. So those are some of the partnerships that we're working on, getting our students placed in some of these aerospace and space exploration industries is very key to us. Yeah, those are some of the things that we've been working on as of recently. But the aerospace engineering degree is a big thing for us.
That's awesome. Dovetails a little bit, but what's been one of your proudest achievements so far?
Here at UH Clearly?
Yeah.
I have a great team, and there's just so many things that they do there's so many things they do that are big on the radar, and there's so many things they do that are just small, that are just still phenomenal, but don't get a lot of praise. I think one of the biggest things that I think I'm still proud of, and I'm proud of all these things, but the biggest one was our pivot during COVID. So I got here 6 weeks before the shutdown. So I started 6 weeks to the day before the shutdown. And I was actually out of town during spring break when the shutdown occurred. And I came back, got the team together and said, we have thousands of faculty and staff that we have to pivot all to doing classes online. And we also need to update the majority of our classrooms to do synchronous and asynchronous instruction. So guys, what do? It's crunch time. Plus, people who are getting ahead of us on this thing are buying up everything in sight. And so the team came together, came up with a phenomenal plan, and really just started executing in their various areas. That plan, we were able to get all of our staff out from the campus, working from home, getting them the resources they needed. And it's another story of resilience. It's, hey, this pandemic occurred. We've not faced anything like this. However, they did take some very good lessons from when we've had hurricane evacuations, where the thing about a hurricane is it's not the hurricane itself, it's the aftermath. Because you don't have power, you don't have water, roads are flooded, mobility is limited. So we've dealt with this before when we've had to close the campus for Harvey or Ike or whatever else that came through. And so they said, let's use some of that let's explore how we fixed those things before, and let's use those. And that was one of the biggest accomplishments, I think. And like I said, that wasn't me accomplishment, but that was the team bringing all of their experience and resources to bear to make that happen.
Okay, so let's talk about the team. Let's go a little bit deeper on this. So how do you foster that leading up? You don't know when the next one's going to come. You didn't know COVID was coming. How do you, and I guess in this case, you had just got hired. Well, walk us through, what does the 6 weeks look like? And then you get hammered with COVID. But what is the 6 weeks like? You're onboarding, you're meeting the team members. How are you building trust throughout?
So I have to say it was not easy, because they didn't know me, I didn't know them. And so we had to learn a lot about each other. And I also had to learn about the culture of the institution. I spent a couple weeks early on meeting with faculty, meeting with constituents, saying, okay, what's your thoughts about IT? What's good? What's bad? What's not working? And then gather that and went back to the team. I think the team, though, was just, they didn't know me, so they didn't know, what is he here to turn everything around, or is he here to keep things steady? What are we going to do? And I told them early on is that I really want you to think of the organization that when someone speaks of it, they speak of it highly. And so how can you add that type of value to it? It's not easy. And I have to even say, honestly, it was a big leadership challenge for me because it's a totally new team. And I actually told one of my peers, it's hard managing a team that you've only spent maybe a couple of days. If you collectively look at the time that you've actually sat in the room with them, maybe a day or two in solid time with. And now you're having to try to inspire them, lead them remotely. One thing we had to do is be very humanistic with it. When COVID hit, the team, they had their own personal challenges. They lost loved ones, they lost friends, they lost coworkers. And so there had to be a certain degree of, we have to get the work done, but we will get the work done. Some things, I have a saying, I say, if nobody's dying, and we're not losing billions of dollars, and the world's not going to come to an end, maybe we can figure out the best time and place to do this rather than, and I've told other leaders this too, you can't be so, you've got to get things done. It got to be that, while there's times and places for that, that can't be your go-to method for everything, because you may have a very highly effective team for a good while, but eventually you'll burn them down. So you got to figure out a way to get sustainable movement. And some of that is walking in the partnership, right? We both walk together. When you're tired, let me take on some of that. When I'm tired, you can take on some of this.
Yeah, no, I really like that. That's just, as a leader, you like, even like sometimes like you think about like high school basketball coach, I'll use that example. It's like with the kids, you can respond during the game just because the intensity level is higher and you can be amped up. During practice, it's like usually a little bit more mellow and you have that piece. But I think about what you said as a leader and just taking the time to learn what's going on in their personal life and how might that be affecting. There's going to be there are going to be some times where it's going to be maybe a little more intense, and then just having the pulse on the team of where they're at, and hey, you know what? Right now something's happening with grandma. Like, let me take on a little bit more, and I think that that just builds that culture and trust that, and no institution, no organism is one, and you can build in other folks to step in. Just helps keep everything humming along, and which is really great. Is there a specific story of one of your team members that comes to mind that you would love to share? This is just such a great example that I would like to highlight.
Well, I'll tell you two stories. So one of the stories that's here, and then one of the stories is at my former campus. So one of the stories here, being in Houston, you think of it being so metropolitan that it's hard to fathom that a person that lives 20 miles from here has no internet service. And so it was incredible to see how my team worked with students to get them access to the internet when a lot of them said, we don't have internet access. And like I said, when I came to the campus, I'm like, you're in Houston. It's one of the largest cities in the country, definitely one of the really largest cities in Texas. And you don't have access to internet. It seemed odd to me. Not unfathomable, but just odd. And there's food insecurities, there's lack of internet access, all kinds of like things, transportation issues. And so the compassion at which my staff worked with students to get them, as much as so as here's where the student lives, here's all the places around you and the libraries in your particular area where you can get access to go to do your classes while we're during COVID, telling them, oh, here's the internet service providers that are giving discounts right now. So you can, like, for $10 a month, you can get internet access so you can do your classes. And their ability to stop and humanly connect with the individuals was very inspiring and touching. It was just very inspiring and touching. And a story from my former campus was one of my telecommunications person was working with a student, and the student was asking for a TTY device for the deaf. And It's like the student can hear and can see, but they're asking for this device. And okay, I don't understand why they're asking for the device. So we went back and forth a little bit. So then I got a chance to talk to the student, and a little bit of an emotional story, but I got a chance to talk to the student. And the student said to me, it says, both of my parents are deaf. So when I was born, I learned sign language, and I didn't learn to really speak until I got to school because my parents don't really speak. They do sign language. And because of that, she taught her sister how to speak because she had learned to speak going to school. But here's what they said, and here's the a little bit of emotional part. She said, I'm my parents' daughter, and they send her to school, and they have no way to talk to her because they can't hear her voice. Their daughter is 5 hours away, and this is their first child they sent to school, and they have no way of reaching out and communicating with their daughter. And I was like, wow. And that's when it hit me that all of what we do technology-wise affects somebody. There's a human aspect to it. And so my staff went beyond and above to make sure we got all their networking stuff set up, and we got to meet the parents. And the parents were emotionally grateful to be able to, like, you allowed us to have peace of mind while our daughter was gone and allowed us to be able to communicate and interact with our daughter. And you guys really cared. And so that really changed my understanding of what I do and why I do it, because wow, to me it's, oh, we're just adding a network device. It's another thing on the wireless. It's another thing that we have to run a network line for, whatever. But I said, no, that actually impacted a person's life. Just like during COVID, there were students that they were first generation students. They didn't come from a background where you had people that were helping them, or that they were in environments that were helpful. And then for my staff to take that time to help them get access to go to their courses, to be able to graduate and to do things with their families, and for their families to see success through education, it really gives you a sense of that we're actually doing something really impactful here.
Yeah, no, I love those two human stories, as it takes what you do, and it could be from some basic implementation or devices on the network or whatever it is, to there is actual impact that is happening, lives are being changed, and that's the stuff those are the stories, which are great. These are actually the part of why we have a podcast. These are the stories we want to share, because I think a lot of times what happens is if you end up doing the job, and it could be someone on your team, if you end up doing the same job for 20 or 30 years, you get a little bit just grinded down and forget about the impact you're having. Tim over here, who's doing all the camera work, thanks Tim. We were in Seattle. We were at Seattle City Hall, interviewed a bunch of folks on this IT team for the city of Seattle, and great people, and never been on a podcast, and no one had talked. Some of the folks have been there 20, 30 years and never been asked like their job and kind of that whole impact. But there are, I don't know, it's like 800,000 folks in Seattle are relying on them for a number of services. And so there's real work that has an input and an outcome. Speaking of, I know this is an overrun topic, and at EDUCAUSE, anytime I said the word AI, someone was like, hey, you got to take a drink. Clearly I got no beverage here, but so I've got to ask, AI in higher ed, how does the university think about it? How are you thinking about it from behind the scenes?
Wow. Yes, this is one of those where, yes, you'll need to take a drink. It's a very interesting time. So I was talking to my boss, the provost, and he said that it was interesting because the conversations we're having about AI are similar conversations we had when Google became the biggest search engine, when we introduced calculators, when probably back before my time when they introduced slide rules and said, oh, you have this thing that allows you to do something quicker. So that's one aspect of that we're having these same conversations. Another part of it is that this is a technology that's unlike other technologies that we've seen before. It has so much potential, but like anything with that type of potential, it can be used for good or bad. Are students using it to do homework? Are they using it for tutoring? Or are they using it for grammar checking? Or are they using it for whatever they may be using it for? And so as institutions, we're also grappling with state legislatures, and we haven't seen things at the federal level yet, but it's soon to come about how much AI do we use? Do we take humans out of those loops or put them into those loops? What things do we do with those? So back to your question of what as an institution are we doing? we're looking at various ways to, one, get our students familiar with the tools and especially the ethical use of the tools. It's back to the calculators, back to Google. Cite your work, right? Explain where you got your answers from, be able to explain the answers, right? Also, making sure that when you how to ask questions properly, how to build and formulate ideas, and using the AI as a tool to formulate those ideas rather than for the tool itself to generate the ideas for you. And so those are the things that I think we're struggling with. Policy is always behind innovation, right? Because you don't know what you're going to find out and figure out new uses for. And so as that happens, we're on the back end saying, okay, students are already using these things because it's almost embedded in almost everything they're using anymore. So how do we wrap some policy around it so that we can teach students the ethical use of AI?
Coming to an iPhone near you right now.
Yeah, basically, right? If I can ask my iPhone, here, I'm gonna take a picture of my math homework, can you give me all the answers? It's okay. Or, hey, can you explain how to do this work? How explain the concept behind it so I can learn the concepts. I think there's more of a push that you're gonna see more AI tutors, you're gonna see more AI proofreading and writing and those types of things. You're never gonna take the human out of there because there's a certain emotional element to the things that we do, like writing or mathematics or art. But this is just going to be another tool that's going to allow us to innovate and do much more than we were able to do before.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. It is probably the thing I say about 100 times a day to my wife is, hey babe, had this conversation with ChatGPT and like laughing. But even right now, so apropos, just even with college students, the fact that you can have a writing assistant, not ChatGPT isn't your writer, but just having that assistant and your ability to process different thoughts, ideas is absolutely incredible right now. Like it is total game changer. I actually like the other position where talking about, especially with college students, how they, especially when they take tests, like how can you start to measure that? I actually like the very open-ended, walk me through, tell me how you arrived at that, because there's a very like critical thinking process that it actually forces them to arrive at whatever outcome. And I'm more curious about that piece than the 2 + 2 = 4 and or I have a TI 84 plus whatever. And yeah, I'm just running these calculations, which I think have lost a lot of that, like we were talking about offline, but a lot of that kind of critical thinking piece of that's the piece that's so fascinating because if you can, I love that we're doing this with the NASA and the space because it embeds that curiosity. And if you're curious, you can start asking questions that lead you to new questions and it breaks down it could even break down potentially false beliefs that you have. You never thought this could be done before, but people in other industries are already doing it. And so everything I'm doing isn't original TechTables, Joe Tosti. I've got a friend of mine who is in Atlanta or in San Francisco, and they're just in totally different industries. And we're talking outside of industry, and we're coming together, and we're like, hey, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? How do you think about this over here? And then we're like, okay, hey, have you thought about this for public sector? I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. We should totally do that. But I think finding out what turns those kids on or even the staff on that you have, you just come up with better solutions. And yeah, then I get really jazzed because I get just to geek out on all this kind of stuff. Tactically, do you have any use cases just for your staff right now that are your like, and then maybe they're not quite implemented yet, but you're like, you've got a couple ideas around this could be the future?
One use case, and I was talking to a colleague in our system today, one use case is chatbots. And I'm not a big fan of the word chatbots. It just sounds weird to me. So one of the good use cases is chatbots. And one of those things is that there's a lot of HR policy. There's a lot of these different things that we've collected, these different policies and procedures and those types of things. So wouldn't it be interesting if a student could talk to an individual that has mental access to everything, all the information in your enterprise? So I could talk to one person and ask them about a parking ticket I got 2 weeks ago, ask them what my GPA is, ask me what I want to take this class, but what do you think based on my major? And ask those questions and get an answer, but an answer that is thought out because I'm asking a person who's has unlimited energy, not tired, and can remember everything at the moment that I ask. That's the perfect use for, and this, I think we are calling it now like an AI assistant more so than a chatbot, because I'm not on the phone with the cable company going back and forth. Can I do this? Or can you tell me this? And if it has keywords, just no, let me give natural language and ask it a question. And then based on that question, it can give me a bunch of different answers, but can also give me ideas and suggestions. It says, hey, you want to take this class? Why you want to take that class? Oh, I'm interested in this subject. Did you know we also offer X, Y, and Z class that covers that same type of subject? You may be interested in these. It gives the student a much more real-time interactive concierge, more so than let me go make an appointment to talk to an advisor, or let me go make an appointment to talk to my professor and try to beat the ground for that. So that's a really good use case that I'm seeing with a lot of my colleagues and even some agencies, is that using it to build out we call it the customer experience, but in our case, it's the student experience. How can we build out an experience that we can give a concierge to a student, and from the day they walk in the door to the day they graduate and even beyond, they can interact with this concierge and get information based on their particular demographics and needs and whatever that is actually helpful. Hey, did you know that I see you're about to graduate? Have you been to career services and looked at the job openings? Have you reached out? Have you have your resume ready? Oh, you don't? Oh, would you like me to set up an appointment, or would you have a copy of your resume? Would you like me to send that to someone so they can look at it and set up that conversation with? That kind of concierge service is hard to do, but with an actual person, but with having technology do that, great use case for that.
Okay, I love this use case only because how I'm using it, almost very similar. I use an app called Notion, store all my podcast transcripts in there, all my meeting transcripts in there. And I was at Costco picking up snacks for tomorrow's event, and I had a call with Summer, who is fantastic. Shout out to Summer Shao at the City of Houston. And she has a thing now that became very popular with the City of Houston called Summer Snacks. And so she's got a cart of snacks that she does. I couldn't remember what snacks she was talking about. And then so I call her and she doesn't pick up. And I'm like, oh, and then I was like, you know what? We had that call. So I went into Notion, and I just opened the little chat person and said, hey, I'm looking for summer snacks. Oh yeah, on this meeting, on this date, here were the snacks that Summer listed. And then she ends up calling me, and I tell her this story. I'm at Costco. Jack's eating a slice of pizza. And she's like, I even texted you the snacks. So I know, I just totally forgot. I got a million things going on. But it was so cool to have this in the database and just query it just by asking. And she's just to let you know, not all my snacks are from Costco. So I will go to I will get the non-Costco snacks so then I told her, hey, we bought too much. So we're going to donate after tomorrow's event. We're going to donate all these snacks to Summer's snack cart that's there. So I love this use case. Practically, yeah, everything from what are the most popular internships that kids are getting to XYZ. It's fantastic.
And another thing at the state agencies, especially the state agencies that are very much forward-facing, working with different groups in the state, they use they're looking at using this technology as well. So I go to renew my driver's license, and it can look me up and say, okay, you're renewing your driver's license. Do you want to do your voter registration? I see that you've moved. Do you want me to put you in contact with the people who do the voting there? Or, hey, I see that your XYZ is about to expire. Or I see that, there's this job that you may qualify for. I see that you have unemployment, so here's these benefits that you have, but here's some jobs that come open that you may be interested in. Those types of use cases, especially for the citizens of Texas, so they're not going to multiple offices, but they can, I think, long-term down the road, is that eventually these things will get tied together, and so you will have this, for a lack of a better Texas concierge, that will basically be able to look across the agencies and say, oh, here's some things that would be good for you. Here's some things that I think would be great for you. And I think that's where we're going to go with. I think that's going to be, back to your point, the use case that what we're doing individually, we'll be able to do from our government for the citizens.
And we'll have Wendy Barron. She's going to be at dinner tonight. And she's coming. She's fantastic. She's been on the podcast before, but yeah, another great example use case. She's going to come on. Courtney won't be able to make it, but Courtney will be tomorrow. She's going to come tomorrow. Great. And so at TDLR. But yeah, just even as I think about it as going back to the experience, I'm both a consumer as a kind of an individual, so we can think DMV, but I'm also consuming business services too. But it's the same thing, like even in the state of California, the DMV doesn't know that this is the same person filling out his LLC renewal, or so there's all these different Joseph Tostes running around, and none of them are connected. And I can never keep up if I'm like on time or anything else. And it's a tough problem to solve because you've got that level and you have the city level or the county. But I think over time, I think if we can get some cool data sharing agreements and other things like that, the experience is going to be, it'll be really great. And we've had, another great one. We had Dan Texar on the podcast. It was a while ago, I met with him and his team at the Texas Chili Parlor in Austin, which is a ton of fun, but it was the same thing. He probably got to come back on at this point. It's probably been 2 years, but he was at the time, they were just getting started with a very large modernization project. And yeah, I actually got to check in with him on that one. So just wanted to touch, I think, two more spots. Cybersecurity. So I had to plug, as I was prepping for this podcast while Jack was sleeping this morning and not moving around, and I remembered in my brain that I interviewed Renee Wynn, the former NASA CIO, and I cannot make this up. I don't even know what episode it is, but I'm going to link it into the show notes. She will love this. So she shared how crisis moments often become catalysts for cybersecurity transformations at NASA, and she also has talked about the kind of the legacy, the kind of hardware just provides such a different dynamic than, because a lot of the stuff is new age tech today. But I was interested in not so much with rockets, but on the higher ed side, if you could maybe talk about the increasing cyber threats, like walk about and talk about how you're building that cybersecurity culture here at the university.
Cybersecurity is a foremost concern for all of us. And in the age of AI, cybersecurity is going to definitely be different. I'm pretty sure there's bad actors that are using AI out there. And there's, as you probably heard or known, that a lot of it's finding that needle in the haystack. A lot of times find out, okay, where are we vulnerable? And so a big piece of that is using AI to help data mine, but also look for these threats and say, hey, this looks out of place. Maybe we should investigate this, and give you some actionable intelligence rather than a person having to sit there and dive through and try to find everything. In higher ed, similar to probably NASA as well, we really have to look at security and accessibility, we have people who are doing research here with people all around the world, but we also have to be secure from everybody around the world. And we're doing some pretty interesting and pretty high tech and pretty security sensitive work. So it is foremost in our minds, but at the same time, allowing our researchers to be able to collaborate with people and totally on the other side of the planet. So it is foremost in our minds. It's a very changing landscape. We're fortunate that a lot of our security operations are centralized in our system offices, which allows us to all be on the same page with security, and that all of our security officers are talking to each other because they're all in the same physical space. So that's helped us out a lot. And then really creating a culture of, hey, there's these threats out there that we really need to get ahead of, but the weakest point in your security program is your users, and what your users, do they fall for phishing, or are they AI generated voices? Are they falling for these fake phone calls, those types of things? So we've done a lot of work in creating the culture here, is that security is not here to stop you from doing anything, but security is here to keep you from hurting yourself or others by doing something unintentional that may be dangerous. And it's actually paid some good dividends, because a lot of faculty members now are thinking, should I click this email first? This looks suspicious. If it looks suspicious, maybe I should say something. If it's not quite right, maybe I should say something, as opposed to, yeah, it'll be okay. And if it isn't, we can fix it afterwards. That no, let's be safe than sorry.
Do you send out any campaigns to mess with any of the professors or to get them to click, or?
Not really, because they get enough of that. And it's interesting. There's enough of it. I think we looked at our statistics. We have probably 97% of the email that would get to us is spam. So our mail filtering and stuff drops that out.
Okay.
So that 3% that still gets through, some of it is still stuff that is problematic. There's enough of it that it gets through, just enough of it. that makes us not really even want is we don't need to do it because it's being done for us all the time.
Awesome. No, I'm sure if you got great filters, you can cut down the majority of that. So as we wrap up, curious, just very short, we were at EDUCAUSE together. What were some takeaways, some highlights, some gems that you had?
Wow, EDUCAUSE was phenomenal. I'm glad that they got back to Texas. A lot of collaboration opportunities, a lot of seeing what other campuses and institutions are doing. In higher ed and technology, we on occasion, we silo ourselves. And so being around others at EDUCAUSE, we actually get to cross-pollinate. So we get to talk to people in technology-related fields in education, but not necessarily the CIOs. You're looking at associate provosts or researchers or IR people that may be at the conference as well, but they're talking about technology and how it impacts their areas. A lot of the good takeaways is really just, hey, what's coming down the pike for enrollment the next 5 to 10 years? What are you guys doing about AI policy next 5 to 10 years? What are you doing about online continuing education, remote education, distance education? What are you doing about those things? And what do you see the future of those things are going to be? As we come to a very flat, open world when it comes to technology, you can sit here and take a class from a university in Spain. So if the world is going to be, as they say, flat, then what's the thing that we need to do from a technology perspective, but also from a strategic perspective to keep ourselves viable and relevant? So those are some of the big takeaways I got was having those conversations. A lot of you get a lot of great information in the sessions, but a lot of these secondary conversations are just phenomenal because you're like, wow, I didn't know you guys were dealing with that. We are too. Oh, wow, you guys are having these enrollment issues. I know of some colleagues that are having those issues too. So, wow, that's really interesting. And just some of the innovative ways and solutions that they come up with those particular challenges.
No, that's great. I don't know about any of the EDUCAUSE sessions because I was sitting on the main floor the whole time on camera, but I'm sure that I heard they were fantastic.
They were great.
Yeah, it's great. I love that. Thank you for coming on the show. Super excited that we were able to do this here with this backdrop, and I had a blast with you.
Thank you for coming. I'm glad you got a chance. As a person that loves NASA myself, if I can ever get people to come and take a look at what we have and get them to geek out with me, is phenomenal. So Joe, it's a pleasure as always.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Joe Tossi from TechTables.com, and you're listening to the Public Sector Show by TechTables. This podcast features human-centric stories from public sector CIOs, CISOs, and technology leaders across federal, state, city, county, and higher education. You'll gain valuable insights into current issues and challenges faced by top leaders. Through interviews, speaking engagements, live podcast tour events, we offer you a behind-the-mic look at the opportunities top leaders are seeing today. And to make sure you never miss an episode, head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts, hit that follow button, and leave a quick rating. Just tap the number of stars that you think this show deserves.